Guten Morgen, meine Damen und Herren. Willkommen zur Tagesschau. Schulbeginn nach Corona-Lockdown in mehreren Bundesländern. Nach rund 2-monatiger Schließung öffnen heute in 10 weiteren Bundesländern wieder Kitas und Grundschulen. Bundesgesundheitsminister Spahn hält unterdessen vorgezogene Corona...
Hi guys, welcome back to a new video. After last week's scandalous video, this week we're going to get back into what my channel is actually about, which is university student content. As you've already seen in the title, today I want to go through how I write an essay or a thesis, and I'd like to go through 3 points: research, structure, and write. So without further ado, let's just get into it. So to start, you definitely need to plan and organize what you're going to do. Like, of course, you need to check what is the general assignment, what topic are you going to write about. Then you need to check with your professor or teacher if the topic that you chose is okay and if you're good to go. Then while choosing a topic, I would always recommend to already check research literature and how much you can find. And what kind of articles and books you can find, and if they're site-worthy, if they're going to support your thesis, or if you can build a reasonable argumentative structure around them. So also check how long your thesis is going to be, plan how much time you will need. So the paper that I'm writing right now is only a short one, so I don't need as much time as I would usually do for a bachelor thesis or something. So this one is roughly going to be 5 pages, which is nothing basically. But don't underestimate a short paper, because especially for me, but I think for other people too, it's sometimes even more difficult to plan a argumentative structure that is concise, even when you don't have a lot of space to elaborate on every point. So cutting out stuff can also take a lot of time, so consider that while planning. Then, depending on what subject you're studying and where you're studying and what kind of libraries or online resources you can use, make sure that you know where you want to research and what you want to research. Also think about key terms that you can put into online searches. So of course I can only show you the pages or resources that I use living in Germany, studying in Cologne. Of course I would usually just go to the library, find the subject section that I'm going to write about in the library, and just work my way through those books, and also of course include online resources. But because of COVID, we can't really do that, so I had to research everything online, and then I can order books from the library, which I then have to pick up, but it's very complicated. Alright, now here's my desktop so you can see what I'm doing. I screen recorded this. I have everything organized in subfolders, as you can see, in modules, and this is the paper that I'm currently writing on. So I'm opening up all the windows that I'm going to need to work on the paper. This is what I have so far. Everything is in bullet points, some notes that I've already taken, some books that I've already read. You can see this was a couple of weeks ago. And then I also have notes on how I'm going to go about planning and writing this paper. So I have subcategory for university organization, I have study plans, and then my paper. And here's the main structure that I'm going to follow. This is the main structure that I always use for essays that I've learned about in class. You can see it has an introduction, body, and conclusion, and then the main ideas. I can already spoil because this is a voiceover. I've recorded my screen a couple of weeks ago, as you can see on the date. I've already finished the thesis because I actually crammed it in one weekend and worked through. I know this is normally not what you're supposed to do, and this is normally not what I do, but I had a lot of work coming up. I had a couple of jobs, And so I got kind of scared and powered through it to get it done before the next job, because I was scared that I wouldn't have enough time in the end. Also, this is the subject that I'm writing the paper in, and I just wanted to make sure that I met all the criteria that the professor talked about in class, and so I checked if that works out. It does. The topic that I'm writing about is the social function of the Swedish holiday midsummer, and of course it's really hard to find a final answer to that on 5 pages. Of course that's not possible, but still it's possible to find a few arguments for and against that thesis, and so that's what I'm trying to do here. Without structuring the text yet, I've just compiled a few notes. I've already written down my thesis. Of course all of that can still change over time, so my thesis that you can see here definitely changed. I put in a few definitions first, because in an academical paper it's always important to define the terms that you're using. Yes, and then you can already see when I take notes from an article, from a book or something like that, I always, from the beginning on, note down the page that I found that information on and the author of the book. So later on, when I push around all the notes and merge them into a text, that the information of where I found that information is still attached to the statement, and so it's easier to then cite those statements. Yes, so as always, for writing and for studying, I'm choosing background ASMR, Harry Potter themed. Alright, now in my folder for the subject I also have all the articles that I want to use that I was able to download. I also have other notes from the presentation that I had to do on the same main subject, and I'm going to use some of those notes for the paper as well. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm using Word, and for citation I don't use like a software, even though I know that they're very useful and I should definitely try and use one, but I'm still doing it manually, just because I'm like very lazy. I don't like learning new things. I don't know why. It's frustrating. But I'm going to try and use Sotero, and then there's also Citavi, I think, and probably some others that I don't know of. Like, I've done the first step, I downloaded Sotero, but I haven't gotten around to using it. I don't know why. Stupid. So here's one of the articles that I'm going to use. So I'm just putting that beside the notes that I have so I can work through it and write down stuff, because from PDF documents you can't really copy paste, so that's a little bit annoying. So I just type it down and, as I said, immediately note down the page number. When choosing books or articles online, I always check the contents page to see if there are any interesting chapters in there that could be relevant for my thesis. Of course, I almost never read the whole book or the whole thing, just because there are a lot of stuff that isn't really relevant here. By the way, in the background I'm always using translation software, Google Translate or Dict or DeepL or stuff like that, because of course I also have to read articles or books in Swedish, and my Swedish of course isn't fluent yet, because I just started learning it this semester, and this is something that I've only found out a few months ago, that in Word you have the option of switching to focus mode, and that really helps me focus, so I can only recommend using that. Also, as you can already see, after each section of notes that I take from one article or from one book, I always immediately try to put a summary down below, or like one main statement that is summing up the article for me. So when reviewing the notes to get to writing, it's easier to find exactly what you want to include. Now let's get to chapter 2, structure. So here you can see that I'm setting up a new document, which loosely has the structure that I'm planning to use. So I'm already trying to put down the 3 main arguments that I'm going to use, or that I'm going to follow, and these will also make up my main body of the text. And I'm putting in headings to mark where my chapters are going to start and end, so to get a little bit more structure. And also I'm marking where I still need more content, so what kind of topics I still need to research, and so I get a better overview. Also, don't forget to save the documents. Top tip. And one other thing, down below all my notes, I put the information about the literature that I used. I always try to keep that updated so I don't get confused in the end. All right, now I put down the contents that I want to have on my content page. So we have an introduction, we have 3 main chapters for the main body of the text, and then we have a summary in the end. And of course the literary information. Now I'm trying to apply that structure to the notes that I already have and sort them into all the chapters. So I'm kind of moving and shifting everything around so it fits the structure. So you can already see that I colored the main argument of the chapter in red. And I'm also later on going to color code the main argument of each paragraph in blue. I'm very clear of what I'm saying in this chapter or what I'm saying in this paragraph that is supporting my argumentation. In an essay or a thesis that has an argumentative structure, I'm always trying to state the main argument of the chapter in the first and in the last sentence, of course in different ways, but still so it neatly ties in and the reader knows exactly what I'm trying to say. On top here you can see my main thesis for the whole paper. Underneath, questions that still need answering and that I will look at during the writing process and see if I have answered all of them. I collected them over the time of research and over the time of structuring and planning the whole thing, just to make sure that I haven't forgotten anything. All right, now we're making progress. So let's get to chapter 3, writing. So I haven't screen recorded every single minute of working on this paper, but as you can see here in this stage I've already written down most of the text passages. Here I'm checking if I have included the main argument of the chapter in the beginning and in the end, and then I will take the red part in the beginning out because I just put that on top, but I've also written it into the text part. My summary, you can see, isn't done yet because I will do that in the end, and also my introduction isn't final, of course, because I would always recommend to of course plan your structure and your argumentative structure of course, but write your final introduction in the end, because then you can really be very precise in saying what you're trying to do and what your thesis is and what your arguments are, and because all of that has to go into the introduction as well as into your summary. So I would always write the main body of the text first and then do introduction and summary. I'm putting all the main arguments of every chapter into the summary to make sure that I have included them there. You can see now that I'm trying to compare this with the main structure that I've already shown you in the beginning. So I want my introduction to start with a nice sentence that will pull my readers into the topic and let them know what we are talking about here. Then I will give my thesis in a precise sentence, in one sentence. Don't make it too long, just say what you want to say and that's it. And I will also already state my main 3 ideas. Of course it can be more if it's a longer paper, but here in my case it's 3 main ideas that I will then restate and in more detailed depth about in the 3 chapters that I chose. So in the end everything has to make sense and everything has to be picked up again at some point. Let me tell you, if you follow a nice structure and if you tie in every point, if there are no loose ends, this will get you the grade A. Of course, your content has to be nicely researched too, your arguments have to make sense, But if you don't have that structure, you will never get that good grade, because this is what's like selling your paper to the professor. So here, as I already said, I'm marking in blue my 3 supporting ideas for every chapter. So I also want to make sure that for every main supporting argument that I have in every chapter, I want to have 1 paragraph. I know it sounds very complicated, but it's really not. If you want to think about it graphically, maybe it's easier if I draw it here. I don't know if that will work, but I'll try. So we have our main body of text. We divide it into 3 chapters. And in each chapter, zoom in. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that, but we'll try. In each chapter, we again have a structure of 3 paragraphs with 3 main arguments. I hope this helps. I don't know. But of course, in the end of each chapter, we still need to restate our main argument for that whole chapter. And in the conclusion, we want to restate our main thesis for the whole text. We want to restate our 3 main points, but don't simply repeat them. But now is the time to say why these main points support your thesis. In the end of your summary, you want to have a sentence that will, I don't know, give a Ausblick, we say in German, or just an insightful sentence about, if I had more time in this, blah, 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 it would also be interesting to look at, or for example, in my text, I had something like, due to the nature of this paper, the argument of la 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 was only scratched lightly, but it would be very interesting or insightful for further research to see in more detail how this and that will influence that and that, or something like that. With saying something like that, you show that you have really thought about the subject and that you know that of course you can't cover everything, and that you've read the books and you've read the articles and you know at what point research about this subject is at the moment. All right, you can see I've written the main body of text, I've worked with the summary, and now I'm looking at the introduction. Of course, I'm again I'm just copy pasting here, but of course I have to word everything differently in the end. Copy pasting what my main arguments were, what questions I wanted to answer in this paper, what my thesis was. You can all see that color coded here. So I'm just copy pasting everything in and then trying to write it to a nice text. All right, I'm also starting to build a front matter page with the title of my thesis. I'm putting in a contents page. I'm now trying to set up how the paper is going to look in the end, what has to be on what page and all that. Now let's try and make it pretty, because your contents page should be linked to all the main headers. The contents page will look better with the page numbers on the side if you link it like this. All right, now I'm going to go through the whole text and see for which statements I still need a source that I haven't noted down. Okay, let's get to formatting, and of course let's get to citations. This is, if done manually, a pain in the ass of work, depending on how long your paper is. I start alphabetically. I just copy the information from the first author, from the first work that I want to cite. I use the search bar in the Word document to look up that author, and then it will show me all the instances that I've cited something from that author, and I will just press insert footnote here via references and copy or paste the information in the footnote. Of course, this is not how it's going to look in the end, but just to make sure that I put all of this in the footnotes before making them look pretty. See if you need to use abbreviations in the footnotes. There are a lot of style guides out there in the internet you can check this with and how you're supposed to do that. Don't take my word for it. Do your research or follow what your teacher or your professor tells you, you can always ask. The Modern Language Association has a full style guide on their webpage, and I think APA does that too, I'm not sure. Yeah, so I'll do that with all of the articles that I used. And something very important too, while doing this process, I will also see which of the literature that I've noted down in the information down below I haven't really cited or used. Of course, I've read it, but if I didn't cite anything from that book or from that article, I can't put it in the literary information. Of course, if you've read 15 books and in the end, in your literary information, you only have like 3, or this is not 3, 3 works cited, that's very sad, because it looks like you haven't put in a lot of effort. You wouldn't cite anything that isn't relevant or that isn't helpful, but sometimes a text was very helpful and relevant, just that you didn't really find one sentence that stood out that you want to cite directly or indirectly, and that's the case when I kind of go back and try to find one sentence that I can cite, so I can put the book into the information down below. So this is how my literature information page should look like. We want to have, of course, depending on your school, at least in my subject, it's supposed to look like this. So you have hanging paragraphs. Of course, you want to make sure that you're using the right way of citation that is required from you. I'm using MLA style with the German style footnote combined. All right, now let's finish this up and look how the final product looks. So this is my front matter page. I'm not sure how much I can show you from this because of course it has my name and address and all that, so I can't really share that on here, but it has the title. It says that it's a thesis, the institute that I'm working on. Here I'm changing to another view mode so I can have a better overview. It's the subject that I'm studying in, the semester, the date, all of the information that I need. Make sure to check the style guide from your university or your institute. My paper starts with front matter page, then we have the contents page with the page numbers. I've already inserted also page numbers on all the pages, of course. Then we start with the introduction. We see the headlines are pretty, we see the paragraphs look good, we have the footnotes. They look like they're supposed to be. Yes, I've already needed to cut down a little bit because of course I had too many pages of text. I think like too many, so I had to cut a lot and rewrite. Yes, and of course reread everything, proofread everything, give it to a friend to proofread, give it to someone who studies with you to proofread if everything makes sense, if everything's logical, if the person can understand what you're trying to say, if they can understand your argumentation. Yeah, so here's my summary, and we have the literature, and of course in the end we need the Eigenständigkeitserklärung. Very German word, very German concept, of course. It's just a page where you state, like a copy-pasted text of that you've written this paper on your own, yet that you haven't copied information from someone, that you haven't cited correctly, that you haven't had help from anyone else or something like that. You have to sign it. Of course, don't forget your signature. Yeah, this is how I usually plan, structure, organize, and research and write. And of course, I will then transform this Word document into a PDF, put my signature on it, and then hand it in. Right now we're handing in everything online or digitally via email, so a PDF would be the way to go. Or if you hand it in physically, make sure that all the pages are in the right order and then put it into a nice folder that looks professional. Please don't make it pink with stars and unicorns, even though that's nice and maybe your professor would appreciate it, but it just looks more professional if you choose a like very simple black folder, maybe clear front page, and that's it. So this was it. I hope this was helpful, and now the only thing left to say is good luck with your essay, thesis, or whatever. I think all those tips are applicable to whatever kind of paper you're writing. So let me know if you have any questions. Leave them down in the comments. I know I have to do a little bit more of interaction with you guys. I haven't really found the motivation to post on Instagram a lot. I mean, I do stories, but I don't post a lot right now. But I definitely want to change that. I know I've said that again. I know I've said that before. But this time I really mean it. I have to get back to that, because usually it is fun for me. Just right now I feel super like uncreative. Yeah, but I'll stop ranting soon, so follow me on Instagram, check out my TikTok, check out everything else, my Pinterest or whatever. And yeah, leave a like if you found this helpful or just entertaining. I hope you had fun, and see you next week. Bye!